Fondation Jean-Jaurès.
Penser pour agir.
So hi, Samer Sinijlawi. Thanks a lot for coming to Fondation Jean-Jaurès. I would like first to ask you a personal question. Can you just relate to your personal journey inside the Palestinian society and Palestinian politics, so that people will understand who you are and what do you have in mind in terms of the future of the Palestinian national movement?
Well, thank you, David, for inviting me and having this talk. I'm Palestinian, born in the old city of Jerusalem 52 years ago. I started my political life at the age of 14. I was one of the kids throwing stones in the first Intifada. I went to prison for 5 years. I'm a mainstream Fatah guy who assumed several positions inside Fatah. I was the international secretary for the youth organization of Fatah. Then after that, the coordinator of the Israeli file in the Fatah Supreme Committee, and now I am part of the opposition camp inside Fatah. Opposition sometimes might look as minority. In our case, it's the majority, because 90% of the Palestinians in the polls are requesting that President Abbas resigns and go home. So the opposition is the majority. We are trying to reform the political life inside Palestine. Currently we have a dictatorship. It's one-man show. President Abbas controls everything. We didn't have election for the last 20 years. So we think that the Palestinian reforms is an important step. It's an important step also to change the dynamics between us and the Israelis. Lots of things we can fix. If we fix things internally, it will help us impact the Israelis positively to start, looking differently on the Palestinian issue. Currently, Israelis are under the challenge of security. They see Palestinians as a threat, not an ally or a partner, and this blocks them from political development, from accepting any political compromise. So introducing a Palestinian in a different way to the Israelis will help them release the fear and accept more having some kind of settlement over the two-state solution. And two-state solution is very important, David, because if not a two-state solution, then what's on the table? A one-state reality? If it is a one-state, it's going to be a Palestinian state. Currently, there are 51% of non-Jews living between the river and the sea. And the only way to be sure that the Israelis will live secure in their own Jewish democratic state, and I am in support, and I recognize the need for the Jewish people to have their own Jewish democratic state, the only way to be there is to separate them from millions of Palestinians. The two-state solution, David, does not mean that there will be 100% pure Jewish state and 100% pure Palestinian state. Currently, there are 20% of Palestinians inside the state of Israel, which are the Israeli Arab citizens. They will continue to live there, but they will not change the reality of the domination of the Jewish identity in the state. They will continue to be a minority who will maybe enjoy more rights than the current rights that they have. But also, the Palestinian state does not mean it should block in the future the existence of any Jew. I know that for lots of Jews, they feel they can only practice their Judaism if they live in Hebron, for example. It's part of their ideology. We need to accommodate this. If any Jew that feels he wants to live in Hebron or in Shechem, next to the Joseph tomb, or in Beit El, the biblical sites that are part of the Jewish history, we should be able to allow him to live as an Israeli citizen that is resident of the state of Palestine, that respects the law of the state of Palestine, where the state of Palestine is responsible on his security. But we cannot allow blocks of settlers that have collective privilege, including security arrangements of Israeli army inside the Palestinian state. So the principle of having Jews living inside the Palestinian state is welcomed. It's needed. We need to understand it. So these are the directions. It starts by changing the current leadership. The current leadership, President Abbas, is not capable to do anything. He was offered a very ideal, from a Palestinian point of view, a very ideal proposal by the former Israeli Prime Minister, Mr. Ehud Olmert. In 2008, he put a plan that could have allowed us to establish our state in 2008 on 67 borders with 6% swap. Swap is important. It's important because it transfers block of settlements inside Israel. Around 82-83% of the settlements that live over this 6% of the West Bank can be annexed to Israel. And in exchange, we can get some territory from Israel that will allow us to connect the West Bank with Gaza through a corridor, whether it is underground or overground. But we need this connectivity between Gaza and the West Bank. So the swap is very important for both nations. It accommodates different needs of both nations. I think it was a perfect plan. It also provided a solution for Jerusalem based on all the Jewish neighbors in West and East Jerusalem will become the capital of State of Israel. The Palestinians' neighbors in East Jerusalem will become the capital of Palestine. The old city will not have any flag. The old city will be managed by a committee of 5 countries, including USA, Israel, Palestine, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia. And there will be no sovereign, no Israeli, no Palestinian sovereignty, because there will be no solution that can be accepted by both parties if there will be only one flag over the old city. It's a fact. This old city is important for 3 religions equally. It's important for 2 nations equally. And this is the only way to manage it. Every side will feel he's controlling, he's part of the control, he has access to his sites, the freedom of worship is there, is respected. It was a very good offer. And Abbas declined it. If he declined that offer in 2008, this guy is not capable to achieve any progress for Palestinians. Anytime.
You mentioned the need for a new leadership, so post-Abbas leadership for the Palestinian national movement. But I understand that you are also pushing for a third way in terms also of narrative, like the need for the Palestinian national movement to reinvent itself. So how do you foresee the reinvention of the national Palestinian movement, and how do you think it could convince the other side, the Israelis, that there is a serious partner capable and willing to go for a 2-state solution next to Israel?
Well, David, if you look at both the Israeli Jewish Zionist narrative
we are talking about the need for challenging the current narratives on both sides, and I was asking you about what are the changes that will be needed on the Palestinian side?
Well, we start by saying that Jews we recognize their historical rights to this land, because historical facts says they have been here continuously. I even don't agree with the Zionist narrative which says Jews left the land and waited thousands of years to come back. Jews never left the land. Sometimes they were majority, sometimes they were minority. There was always at least one Jew. I know my grandfather always spoke to me about his partner in a clothes shop in the old city in the 20s, and he was a Jewish partner. Okay, so there was always the other. And for the Jews, they need to understand that they have never also been alone here in this land. There was always others. These others are us. So accepting, recognizing the other side relation, will turn our fighting narratives into one combined narrative that represents both of us. And it will help us to understand that we always have common history together. If we had that common history together, it's very easy for us to find the common future based on that common history, which is coexistence. I always lived my life in the old city, surrounded by Jews, Christians, and Muslims. I am a Muslim who went to a Christian school. The diversity, the religious diversity in this land is part of our identity. It's part of our DNA. It is a little bit of the manipulation of the narrative that made us lost our way to accept the other side as part of whom we are. The Palestinians and the Israelis are not the problem to each other. Palestinians and the Israelis are the solution to each other. It was always like this, and it will be like this when we start thinking about it this way.
So you're calling for a third way, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm calling for a third way on the Palestinian side that is not the corrupt Abbas. Abbas brought corruption to us, and Hamas brought destruction to us. Third way is a way of construction for Palestinians.
And how do you deal with the other side? The occupation, the Israeli far right, the colonization of the West Bank? Because you have two spoilers on each side. You have Hamas, the corruption of the PA, and you have the Israeli far right.
Well, always both people will have extremes who will not accept or endorse the settlement. Okay? And this exists in any nation. There is the mainstream body, and there are the extremes on the right and the left. But the mainstream usually in any nation, they control the far right or the far left, the extremes. In our cases, the Israelis and Palestinians, we are controlled by the minority, who are the extremes, unfortunately. So we need to regain the balance of our nations.
How?
By identifying that I have a partner which is the mainstream on the other side, and I need to accommodate his needs. The need for the 70% of the Jewish Israelis who will support the two-state solution is a need of security. The only obstacle is security. If I will not be able to accommodate their security needs, achieve it, I will not gain their support towards my human dignity and rights and political independence and freedom. So I need to start with the steps of supplying that security. It will automatically generate a readiness to give back freedom and independence. So a first step that comes from us will help them to take similar steps. And I say we should start the first step because we are under sense of urgency more than them.
In Europe, we said the opposite. In Europe, we said that the Israelis should start the first step because they are the stronger part of the conflict.
Well, it didn't work. So I need to try the other way. We tried this. We tried to pressure the Israelis. We tried to lecture them. Did it work? It doesn't work. The Israelis become stubborn. When you pressure them or lecture them, they close their ears. If you engage with them positively, persuade them, win their hearts and minds, you will find them partners into a plan that works.
But the Americans are pressuring the Israelis currently for a hostage deal, and it worked. If it was not for Trump pressure on Netanyahu, I'm not sure that the first part of the deal would have been signed between Israel and Hamas.
Well, when I say pressure does not work, it is because of a fact that USA will never pressure Israel, because USA is not the administration. USA is the Congress, and the Congress does not feel the obligation of pressuring Israel for so many reasons. Okay, so in the case of Trump, I think the pressure came because there was a lot of momentum on the driving forces that affect the decision of any administration to push for that deal. Because that deal is for the best interest of the Israelis, because Israelis are united behind the slogan of releasing the hostages as the first priority in this war, which is not the case of the Prime Minister. Netanyahu is not really attending to the needs and requests of the public opinion in Israel. He more serves the interest of his party and coalition. He lost direction. Okay, he does not really work in the direction of the majority of Israelis. In that case, with the hostages deal, the Americans worked the pressure that serves the majority of the Israelis against their government. Now, when the majority of Israelis will request a Palestinian state and will trust it, the pressure of the Americans will help in that case.
Okay, and last question about so we mentioned both the issue of changing the narrative, changing the leadership. What do you think, what should be the role of France in terms of helping the parties, both Israelis and Palestinians, to, let's say, go over the conflict and build a different future based on a political and diplomatical solution?
Well, I think France, outside the framework of the EU is, as a body, cannot act. The EU as a body is not a player and not a payer even now. They are irrelevant. France alone, President Macron, is capable now to do a major role. We have seen his successful visit in December to Saudi Arabia, and now MBS is expected to pay a visit to France in June. There is the international conference that is happening in New York. The visit of President Macron to the White House was very successful, unlike all the other visits. So in a way, President Macron can come into coordination with MBS and Saudi Arabia to present something that can be bought by President Trump and be accepted by the Israelis. I think that France is playing a very important role, and I think President Macron could play a major important role. We need to see the coming weeks and months are very crucial. We can see this development and momentum building up.
Thank you for everything. Thank you so much, Samer.
Thank you, David.
I hope to see you soon.
See you soon. Thank you. Pleasure.